He smashed my phone on the asphalt so hard the screen exploded, then tightened the cuffs on my wrists until my hands went numb, all while my 9-year-old nephew watched and screamed that I hadn't done anything wrong. The officer said I was loitering and obstructing an investigation. What they didn't know was that I'm one of the people who trains federal officers on how not to violate people's rights. Yeah, that happened. My name is Ava Whitmore, and this is the story of how watching a kid's baseball game turned into an arrest. A city scandal, and a question I still haven't fully answered. How far do you go when the system you serve is the same one that tries to crush you? Let me take you back to that Saturday. It started like any other game day in our house. My alarm went off at 6:30 a.m., the way it does every Saturday when Leo has a game. I rolled out of bed, hit the coffee machine, and cracked the kitchen window open just enough to let in that little strip of cool morning air. It was one of those quiet, half-awake moments where you can almost pretend the world is simple. Then I heard Leo's feet shuffle down the hall. He came into the kitchen in his rumpled Little League uniform, hair sticking up on one side, socks, not matching eyes half closed. He climbed up on the stool and dropped his head on the counter with this loud, dramatic sigh, like he'd just worked a night shift. "Eggs or cereal, baby?" I asked, even though I already knew his answer. He didn't even lift his head. Cereal. The honey kind. So I poured cereal, poured milk, slid the bowl in front of him, and watched him wake up one spoonful at a time. While he chewed, I was running my usual mental checklist in the background. Glove cleaned cleats, scrubbed water bottle filled snack, packed folding chair in the trunk, in case the bleachers were full. All the small things that say you're safe, somebody thought ahead for you. Those routines matter when your life hasn't been stable for a while. Leo's mom, my sister, is serving 8 years for possession with intent. Mandatory minimum. The kind of sentence where nobody cares about addiction or poverty or what pushed you onto that road in the first place. So it's just me and him, aunt and nephew, trying to build something that looks like normal out of all that mess. I was halfway through my first cup of coffee when he looked up at me with this too serious look for a 9-year-old. "Auntie J," he said. "Why do people always stare at us? You know that feeling when your stomach just drops out of nowhere?" I tried to play dumb at first. "What do you mean, baby?" Like at the grocery store yesterday, he said spoon frozen halfway to his mouth. That lady kept looking at us, like she was waiting for something bad to happen. I knew exactly who he meant. I'd seen her too. The way her eyes followed us down the cereal aisle, lingering on my work bag, tracking his hands like he might suddenly slip something into his pocket. That look sticks to you like a film. "They're just curious," I said, and I hated the way those words tasted as soon as I said them. People notice things that are different. Just ignore them, okay? He nodded because he trusts me. But there was something in his eyes, that quiet, heavy understanding, that said he was learning something about this world I wish I could have shielded him from a little longer. If it were you sitting there with that kid, what would you have said? We left the house around 9:10. The field was 20 minutes away, plus time to park, plus the inevitable. I forgot my hat moment. He chattered about baseball stats on the way, and I pretended to care about numbers I will never remember, because the sound of his voice like that, carefree, excited, is something I hold on to. When we pulled into City Park at 9:38, it was one of those perfect suburban Saturdays. Kids running, parents holding coffee, the smell of grass and sunscreen, and concession stand hot dogs. If you looked at it from far enough away, it would have been the picture they use in brochures to advertise good neighborhoods. I parked in my usual spot, 2 spaces from the field entrance. That wasn't random. I'd picked that spot weeks ago because from there I could see the field, and I had 2 clean exit paths, the main road to my left, a service road behind the concession stand to my right. That's just how my brain is wired now. Some people notice the shapes of clouds. I notice exits and camera angles. We got out. I checked the bag one more time, handed Leo his glove. "Go find your team superstar," I said. He jogged off toward the dugout, and I climbed up 3 rows on the visitor side bleachers like I always did. Same spot every week. Leather work bag at my feet. Thermos next to me, jacket folded on the bench. It was my little island in the middle of the Saturday chaos. I recognized most of the faces by then, but not many of the names. The other parents had their friend circles, inside jokes, group texts, carpool rotations. My schedule was too unpredictable to join any of that. Hard to commit to driving the kids to practice when your boss might call at 2 a.m. and tell you to be on a plane in 4 hours, so I sat alone. That's when she showed up. "Hi there," a bright, chirpy voice said behind me. I turned and saw her. White visor, pristine yoga pants, the kind of smile you see on HOA presidents who are about to tell you your trash cans are out half an inch too far. "I don't think we've met properly," she said, coming up a step. "Are you Leo's mom?" "His aunt," I said. "Ava. I'm on the roster as Jordan." Her smile twitched for a second, like that wasn't the answer she expected. "Oh, how nice," she said. "And what do you do, Jordan?" "Government work," I said, keeping it vague on purpose. Her eyebrows went up. "Oh, like social services." I could see the math happening behind her eyes. Black woman raising sister's kid, government job. Must be a caseworker, or probation officer, or something frontline, but not powerful. It's funny how people fill in the blanks with whatever fits their story. "Something like that," I said, because I wasn't about to list out my clearances and case history on a set of aluminum bleachers. She let her eyes drop to my leather bag, that subtle richer trouble scan, and then plastered the smile back on. "Well, it's nice to finally chat," she said. "I've seen you here a few times. You always sit alone." "I like the view from here," I answered. Which was true, just not in the way she thought. She turned and went back to her cluster of moms on the home side. I watched her lean in, whisper, and I watched the whisper move through the group like a wave. Eyes glanced my way, then quickly away. Bags pulled a little closer. Not dramatic, not overt. Just that quiet repositioning that says, "You're not really one of us." On the field, Leo took his place at shortstop, glove, too big for his hand, but determination written all over his face. He turned, looked up, spotted me, and waved. That smile. That's why I showed up every single Saturday, no matter how exhausted or stressed or overworked I was. I took a sip of coffee, did my usual scan, without even thinking about it. About 32 adults, 13 kids, plus a few toddlers running around. One security camera on the concession stand aimed at the parking lot, but not at the bleachers. Chain link fencing on 3 sides open behind home plate facing the lot. One patrol car that passed on a loop about every 30 minutes. I knew because I'd timed it for 3 weeks in a row. Everything felt normal. Then I saw her again, the visor mom. Her name was on the roster, Sarah Holloway. She stood up, walked away from her friends toward the parking lot. Her body language changed. Shoulders hunched, a little head down like she was trying not to be noticed, phone in her hand. I watched her thumb start moving fast across the screen, then saw her put the phone to her ear. She kept glancing back at me. That cold little knot settled in my stomach. I'd seen that exact posture too many times in a completely different context. Not at a ball field, but outside apartment buildings, corner stores, playgrounds. The "I'm just a concerned citizen" call that turns into a nightmare for whoever is on the other end of that description. I told myself I was being paranoid, that she was calling about dry cleaning or a forgotten orange slice snack situation, or complaining about last week's umpire. But my hands moved on their own anyway, phone fully charged. Check, wallet ID at the front, Keys right side pocket, credential case interior compartment of the bag, where it always lives. I didn't take it out. I just made sure I knew where it was. On the field, Leo scooped up a grounder and threw to first with that awkward, determined motion only little kids have. I clapped, forced a smile, kept watching him, because the last thing I wanted was for him to look up and see worry on my face. 6 minutes after Sarah ended her call, a white patrol cruiser rolled into the parking lot. It didn't creep in like, "Hey, what's going on here?" It rolled in with purpose. Did one slow loop, like it was just making rounds, then pulled right into a space near the field entrance. The door opened, and Officer Mark Riley got out. Big guy, bulletproof vest, snug over his chest uniform. Neat sunglasses on hand, resting on his duty belt, in that I'm relaxed. But don't test me way. He didn't scan the field. He didn't talk to the coach. He didn't ask the concession stand volunteer if anything had happened. He walked straight at me. "Ma'am," he said, stopping at the bottom of the bleacher steps. "I need to see some ID." I kept my eyes on the field for 1 extra second. Watched Leo field another ball. Let myself pretend this wasn't happening. Then I turned and looked at him. "Good morning, officer," I said, calm and polite. "Can I ask what this is about?" "We received a complaint," he said. His eyes traveled over my bag thermos jacket. "ID now." "What was the complaint?" I asked. "I'm happy to comply with a lawful order. I just need to understand the basis for the stop." His jaw worked. "Loitering," he said, jerking his head toward the yellow sign at the entrance. "Park rules. No unaccompanied adults." I looked at the sign. I'd seen it 100 times. Big black letters. No loitering. 10 p.m. 6 a.m. I checked my watch nice and slow, letting him and anyone watching see it. "It's 10:17 a.m., I said. "That sign specifies nighttime hours." 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. His voice snapped like a rubber band. "Don't tell me how to read a sign. ID. Now, this is one of those moments where your choices branch off like roots under the ground. Hand over the ID and hope it stops there. Push back and risk everything exploding. You ever been in that kind of split second? I knew how this could play out in his report. I've read enough of them. Subject became argumentative. Subject refused to comply. Subject displayed suspicious behavior. So I made sure every word I said could stand up later. "I'm not refusing," I said. "I'm asking you to articulate the reasonable suspicion justifying this detention. I'm also happy to show you my park permit email and the fact that I'm an authorized guardian for my nephew's team." "ID," he barked again. "Now." So I reached into my bag, slow enough that everyone with a phone pointed at us could tell I wasn't making any sudden moves. Pulled out my wallet, removed my driver's license, handed it to him. He didn't lower his voice. He pressed the button on his radio and said loud enough for half the parents to hear, "I have a black female name, Jordan Whitmore, age 38, at City Park Baseball Field, requesting wants and warrants check." That's how you build a story in people's heads before facts even show up. You say wants and warrants out loud, and suddenly everybody's wondering what I did instead of why he's doing this. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Leo glance toward the bleachers. I could see the exact second the joy drained out of his face. That hurt more than the radio call. I thought maybe once the dispatcher came back and said, "Clear record, this would be over." I was wrong. A second patrol car pulled up, and Sergeant Dale Hutchins got out. Older, lean uniform pressed within an inch of its life. He had the walk of a man who believed policy could protect him from everything. "What's the situation?" he asked Riley. "Suspicious person call, Riley," said smoothly. "Subject is uncooperative, questioning the legitimacy of the stop." That uncooperative was a straight-up lie. I had asked one question, then complied. But in that moment, their version was the one with the badge and the gun. "Ma'am, Hutchins said we're going to need you to come with us for questioning." "Am I being detained?" I asked. still calm. Or am I free to leave? We're conducting an investigation, he said. That doesn't answer my question, I replied. Am I being detained, yes or no? They looked at each other. Doing that silent, what story are we telling calculation. The radio crackled at Riley's shoulder. Unit 12, be advised, subject. Whitmore has no wants or warrants, record is clear. For a heartbeat, I thought that might shift something. It didn't. You're coming with us, Riley said, stepping closer into my space. End of story. On what grounds, I asked. I've provided ID. I've explained my presence. I'm on file as an authorized guardian. What law do you believe I've broken? Obstruction, Hutchins said, like he was calling out a grocery item. You're obstructing our investigation. There it was. The circular logic stripped bare. They start something with no cause, and your attempt to understand it becomes the cause. I heard cleats pounding on dirt behind me. Auntie J. Leo's voice cracked through everything. He came running toward us from the field helmet under his arm, face twisted in panic. I turned and held up a hand. It's okay, baby, I said. Go back to your team. This doesn't concern you, son. Hutchins said to him. That classic I own this scene tone. Something dropped ice cold into my veins. Don't speak to him, I said. And for the first time, my voice had that command edge I usually keep holstered. 16 years of giving orders doesn't just disappear because you're in jeans and a hoodie. Riley's eyes narrowed. He didn't know why I sounded like that, but he didn't like it. Parents had gone quiet. Conversations stopped. Phones were up. Some were pretending to text. But we all know what that posture looks like. Camera open thumb hovering over the record button. Then Tuera stepped forward like she was stepping onto a stage. Officers. Thank God you're here, she said. I'm the one who called. I was just so concerned because she's been sitting here alone. And with all the news lately about predators in parks, she didn't say black. She didn't have to. She wrapped it in predators and concern and let everybody fill in the blanks. I'm his aunt, I said, pointing to Leo. I'm listed on the roster. I'm here every Saturday. I've never seen you before, she said. Head-tilted voice dripping fake confusion. Are you sure you're on the list? Which was wild, because 10 minutes before that, she'd literally told me she'd seen me a few times and that I always sit alone. But lies told confidently have a way of rewriting reality in rooms like that. Another mom. Younger, maybe late 20s, in a team t-shirt, raised her hand a little, like she needed permission. Actually, I have seen her, she said. She's here every week. Same spot on the bleachers. Sarah turned that disappointed PTA president face on her. Are you sure, she asked soft, but pointed. There are a lot of people here each week. Maybe you're thinking of someone else. You could see the other woman's courage deflate. I think it was her, she said. But her voice got quieter, and she stepped back. Just like that, a dozen Saturdays were erased by one confident lie. Ma'am, we need to go now, Riley said. I stood up. I am complying, I said loudly enough for the recording phones to catch it. I am cooperating fully with your instructions. I am walking voluntarily. I am not resisting. File that sentence away in your head. It matters later. As we started walking toward the patrol cars, I felt my phone buzz in my pocket. I didn't have to look to know who it was. My supervisor, Agent Chen, calls me on Saturdays during Leo's games, part of our check-in system. Officer. I said my employer is calling. If I don't answer, they will assume something is wrong. I need to take this call. You can call them back at the station, Hutchins said. Keep walking. The phone stopped buzzing, then started again. If you know federal supervisors, you know they don't just give up after one missed call. This is a professional call, I said. I have a right to inform my employer of my location and status. You have the right to remain silent, Riley said, with this little smirk. Might be a good time to use it. And I thought, okay. They want to play dangerous games. Fine. I'm going to reach into my pocket now to retrieve my phone, I said clearly. I am not resisting. I am not attempting to flee. I am simply answering a call from my employer. My fingers closed around the phone, and Riley grabbed my wrist so hard I saw stars. You heard me, he snapped. Don't. You're hurting me, I said. Keeping my voice level, please release my wrist. Instead of letting go, he yanked the phone out of my hand and flung it down onto the asphalt. It hit the pavement with this awful crack screen shattering into a spider web. You could hear the parents gasp. Some of those phones' recordings shook a little. You can always tell when the person behind the camera is suddenly scared. That was an unlawful seizure, I said. Because at that point I was talking as much to whoever would listen to the playback later as I was to him. I am not under arrest. I am complying. You had no lawful basis to take my property. It's evidence now, Hutchins said, smoothly pulling an evidence bag from his pocket like this was all by the book. Part of our investigation. Sure it was. They put me in the back of the patrol car, and the door closed with that heavy final thunk that anybody who's ever been back there never forgets. It smelled like disinfectant and old fear, the kind of smell that sticks to your clothes. As we pulled out of the lot, I looked back and saw Leo on the edge of the grass helmet dangling from his hand, Coach's arm around his shoulders. He was crying so hard, his whole body shook. She didn't do anything, I heard him yell. She was just watching me play. I had to stare straight ahead, because if I looked too long, I might have done something that really would have justified a resisting charge. The drive to the station took 12 minutes. I counted. When you've been in enough tense situations, you start counting things without meaning to. Seconds turns exits. It's something to hold on to. Riley was typing on the laptop mounted to the dash, talking, as he typed like he was narrating for a documentary. Subject displayed hostile behavior from initial contact, he said. Refused to comply with lawful orders. Created a disturbance in a public park. Demonstrated suspicious interest in minor children. It was like listening to someone describe a movie you were physically standing in, except all the dialogue was wrong. I stayed quiet. Anything I said in that car was going straight into that report, and probably onto the evening news. Booking was every cliché you're imagining. Harsh fluorescent lights, industrial cleaner. Smell a desk sergeant who looked like he'd seen too much and cared too little. Empty your pockets, he said, sliding a gray plastic tray toward me. I put in my keys, my wallet, some loose change, a folded grocery receipt from my coat. Riley nodded toward my bag. The bag too, he said. The sergeant unzipped it and started pulling things out. Charger, notepad, pens, protein bar, sunglasses. Then his hand hit the interior compartment, and he pulled out my leather credential case. What's this? He asked. Personal item, I said. He flipped it open, and here's your twist. Everything in the room shifted in that split second. Not physically, but you could feel it. The gold star was right there, catching the fluorescent light. United States Marshal Service. My photo. My name. The line that said Deputy U.S. Marshal, Northern District of Illinois. He looked at the badge, then at me, then at Hutchins. He knew exactly what he was holding. I'll need to catalog this, he said, voice suddenly extra neutral. But he didn't write it down. He didn't add it to the inventory sheet. He closed the case and set it aside like maybe if he ignored it hard enough, it would stop being real. Turn around, Riley said behind me. Hands behind your back. I'll walk voluntarily, I said. There's no need for restraints. I've complied with every instruction. I'm not a flight risk and I am not violent. Handcuffs are not necessary. Not your call, he said, and grabbed my right wrist again, fingers digging into the same spot he'd hurt earlier. Training kicked in. My body moved before my brain had time to catch up. A simple joint lock reversal, the kind they drill into you 1,000 times until it's just muscle memory. It wasn't an attack. It wasn't a strike. It was just enough to break his grip and free my wrist. "She's resisting," he shouted immediately. "Subject is physically resisting arrest." "I am not resisting," I said. "My hands are visible. I am not attacking anyone." "You grabbed my wrist with unnecessary force, and I adjusted my position. That is not resistance." He yanked my arms behind my back and slapped the cuffs on so tight I could feel the metal cut into my skin. Within seconds, my fingers started tingling. "These are too tight," I said. "They're restricting circulation. I am requesting that they be loosened and that I receive a medical evaluation," noted Hutchins said from a few feet away, but he didn't move. Nobody loosened anything. The word "noted" was just theater. As they walked me toward holding, I said the words I've heard read out in interrogation rooms more times than I can count. "I am invoking my right to remain silent," I said. "I request an attorney. I do not consent to any searches of my person or property beyond what is required for booking." "How the hell do you know that?" Riley muttered under his breath. I didn't answer. I'd already said enough. Meanwhile, in the evidence locker, my smashed phone started ringing inside its plastic bag. The officer on duty glanced over, saw the screen lighting up. Even through the cracked glass and cloudy plastic, the caller ID was clear. DOJ. Chen. The phone rang. Stopped, rang again. Same name. He frowned, picked up the evidence bag, and walked it to the booking desk. "Sarge." He said, "We've got a problem. That phone from the park arrest, it's been ringing. Caller ID says Department of Justice. Same number keeps calling back." The desk sergeant's face changed. He picked up the bag, squinted at the screen, then grabbed the nearest phone and dialed an extension. "Sergeant Hutchins, you need to get to booking right now," he said. "We might have an issue with the Whitmore arrest." "Another pattern interrupt for you. This is where people in that building started realizing they might have messed with the wrong black woman sitting on the wrong set of bleachers. Back in holding, I sat on a concrete bench in a cell that smelled like sweat and bleach. Time moves weird in there. Heavy. I counted the minutes by the echoes. The lunch cart rolling past the shift change chatter. Somebody 2 cells down humming the same 3 notes over and over till a guard told them to knock it off. 3 hours. That's how long they left me in there after seeing my credentials. 3 hours while my 9-year-old nephew tried to figure out if he was about to lose the second parent figure in his life to a system he barely understands. Roughly an hour and a half into that, somewhere on the other side of the building, Agent Chen's name lighting up that evidence bag. Finally scared someone enough to start Googling. Officer Tyler Ramos pulled up my name, saw my federal file, saw the years of service. Then Nephew got called in. She walked into booking like someone who'd just had her weekend ruined and knew it was about to get worse. She went straight to the counter. They laid out my stuff for her. My keys, my wallet, my broken phone still in its plastic, and finally the credential case. She opened it, held it like the weight of that gold star was suddenly heavier than usual. And I watched her shoulders drop in this tiny, almost invisible way on the camera footage later. "You arrested a deputy U.S. Marshal," she said, "for obstruction at a kid's baseball field. Captain, we didn't know Hutchins started. She didn't identify herself. She didn't need to." Marsh cut in. "She wasn't committing a crime. You had no grounds for a stop, let alone an arrest. And you've been ignoring calls from her DOJ supervisor for 3 hours. She called Chen. That conversation was probably its own movie. 10-15 minutes later, they opened my cell, brought me back to booking, and tried to act like we were all just going to walk this off as a misunderstanding. They handed me a property receipt. I looked at the list. "My federal credentials aren't on here," I said. "They need to be listed on the inventory." The sergeant coughed, reached behind him, pulled the case from where he'd tucked it away, and slid it into the pile. "Administrative oversight," he muttered. "Sure," I said. "Let's call it that. I want copies of all reports related to my detention," I added. Body cam footage from every officer on scene. Radio logs, 911 call audio, and every note in the CAD system. This is my verbal request under FOIA and under my authority as a federal law enforcement officer conducting an investigation into civil rights violations. We both knew I'd be filing those requests in writing too. But it felt good to say it out loud. When I stepped into the lobby, Leo was there with Mrs. Peterson, his caseworker. His cheeks were raw from crying. His uniform dusty, his hat clutched so tight his knuckles were white. He broke away from her and ran at me so hard he almost knocked me over. They said you might not come back. He sobbed into my shirt. They said people who get arrested sometimes don't come home. That one cut deep. Because his mom didn't come home. Because he already knows that's not just something people say to scare you. I knelt down, wiped his face with my thumbs. Listen to me, I said. I didn't do anything wrong. If I don't do anything wrong, they cannot keep me away from you. I will always come back for you. You hear me? His eyes searched mine like he was trying to memorize that promise. Then he nodded, but I could feel that part of him that was already bracing for the opposite. You still with me? Because this is where the story stops being just about me and starts being about something bigger. A few days later, I found myself in a beige conference room across from a man named David Monroe from Internal Affairs. He had that burned-out but still trying look, gray hair sleeves rolled to his elbows, like he wanted to seem casual, but not actually relax. Ms. Whitmore, he began. You stated in your complaint that you're a federal employee. Can you provide documentation of that? I placed my credential case on the table, opened it, and slid it toward him. He inspected it like he'd done this 1,000 times, checking the seal, the hologram, the signatures. You're a deputy U.S. Marshal, he said. 16 years. That's right, I said. Fugitive Apprehension Unit. And I do training, including training on constitutional rights. He cleared his throat. The officer's reports say you were argumentative, refused to comply, and created a disturbance in the park. Let's talk about that, I said. I reached into my bag and pulled out what looked like a regular pen. This is a recording device, I told him. Illinois is a one-party consent state. I activated it when Officer Riley first approached me. His eyebrows went up. You recorded the whole thing? The whole thing, I said. From, you need to leave this park now, to the moment you all locked me in that cell. It's backed up to a secure cloud and to my Marshal Service duty log. Even if you smash this, the audio is out of your reach. Play it, he said. So I did. We sat there while Riley's actual words filled the room. My calm voice asking basic questions. His misreading of the sign. The black female running wants and warrants radio call. Sarah's entire performance. The moment he seized my phone. My repeated statement that I was complying. Me invoking my rights. Him yelling that I was resisting when I broke his grip without hurting him. When it was over, Monroe just stared at the little speaker for a second. That purpose does not match their reports, he said. No, I said. It doesn't. Then I slid a USB drive across the table. That has 18 months of 911 calls to City Park, I told him, which I obtained through FOIA. 47 suspicious person calls. 43 of them describe black people. The rest are Latino. 42 out of 47 were cleared as no criminal activity found. He picked up the drive like it was heavier than it looked. So this isn't just about one bad encounter, he said. Nope, I said. It's a pattern. And your department has been playing along. I wasn't done. I took out a printed email, most of the text blacked out. Only a few words visible. Monthly quota. Safe neighbor patrol. Expand to South Side parks. And one clear line at the bottom. You should drop this. The community has long memories. Think about your nephew. You're being threatened, he said quietly. Looks like it, I answered. My supervisor has flagged it as potential intimidation against a federal officer. DOJ is already sniffing around. He leaned back, rubbed his face. You understand, Ms. Whitmore, that if we substantiate all of this, we're talking about false arrest, excessive force evidence, suppression, possible civil rights violations. I understand exactly what we're talking about, I said. I've spent 16 years watching what happens when you let this kind of thing slide. So I'm not just going through you. There's a city council meeting next week. Public comment. The ACLU and my pastor plan to be there. I'll be speaking too. He gave me that this is going to blow up look, Ms. Whitmore. He said that might complicate. Good, I cut in. It should. Stick around because what happened at that council meeting is where everything flipped. The night of the meeting, the council chamber was jammed. Every chair taken, people lining the walls, cameras set up along the back like little robots waiting to drink in every second. The air felt charged. Anger, fear, hope, curiosity, all mixed together. I stood near the back, at first just watching. Reverend Marcus Cole, a local pastor who'd quietly been keeping his own spreadsheet of harassment incidents at City Park, was near the front. ACLU attorney Emily Park sat next to him with her laptop open cable already clipped into the screen input. Leo sat in the third row, with Mrs. Peterson swinging his feet nervously. Dress shirt buttoned wrong on the top button because he wanted to look serious. The council members filed in with that practiced neutral expression politicians wear when they know something messy is about to happen, but they can't show how they really feel. Mayor Thompson took his center seat. Councilman Alex Price, who, fun fact, owns a private security company called Safe Neighbor Patrol, sat 2 seats down on the right. The mayor banged the gavel. We'll start with public comment, he said. First speaker, Sarah Holloway. Of course, Sarah walked up to the microphone wearing business casual and that same PTA smile. If you hadn't been there at the field, you might have believed her. I called the police to City Park because I was concerned for the safety of the children, she said. We've had incidents, and when I saw an unfamiliar woman sitting alone and watching the field, I did what any responsible community member would do. I reported a potential threat. From his seat, Reverend Cole raised his voice. What incident specifically, he asked. Because I've been keeping track. She blinked, thrown off for a moment. Well, there have been suspicious people, she said. Concerning behavior. You mean black families, Emily said from the front row, standing now. Because that's what the data shows. I never said that Sarah snapped. This isn't about race. It's about safety. Let's talk about safety, Emily said, walking to the screen at the front and plugging in her laptop. A spreadsheet appeared. Rows and rows of entries with dates, times, descriptions. These are the 911 calls to City Park over the last 18 months, she said. 47 calls. 43 of them describe black individuals as suspicious. The remaining 4 describe Latino individuals. 0 mention a white subject. Of those 47 calls, 42 were closed as no criminal activity found. The room got quiet. You could feel people shifting in their seats, recalibrating. She clicked to the next slide. This blue line, she said, pointing, is the number of suspicious person calls per month. This red line is the city's payments to Safe Neighbor Patrol, a private security company owned by Councilman Alex Price. You could actually hear people exhale when they saw those 2 lines move together. Calls go up, payments go up. Before Price's contract, there were about 8 calls a month. After it jumped to 27. That's not a coincidence, Emily said. That's a profit structure. The more you call the cops on black families at the park, the more money this company makes. Price jumped in, then defensive. We respond to community concerns, he said. It's standard for security firms to be paid that way. Sure, she said. But when 90% of your so-called concerns are about people of color existing in a public park, this is no longer about safety. It's about racial profiling with a financial incentive. Then Agent Chen stood up from the middle row's DOJ badge on her belt, and the energy in that room shifted again. For the record, she said the U.S. Marshals Service has referred the arrest of Deputy U.S. Marshal Ava Whitmore and the pattern at City Park to the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division. We are investigating possible violations under 18 U.S.C. Section 242, deprivation of rights under color of law. This is not just an internal matter anymore. You could see certain people pale a little. The mayor hit the gavel. "Let's maintain order," he said. But he knew the story wasn't his to control anymore. It was my turn. I walked to the microphone. My legs felt steady even though my heart was pounding. "My name is Ava Jordan Whitmore," I said. "I'm a deputy U.S. Marshal, and I have been for 16 years. I've tracked murderers, guarded witnesses, and gone into houses not knowing who might be waiting behind the door with a gun. But nothing in my federal training prepared me for watching my 9-year-old nephew see me shoved into a patrol car for sitting on a bleacher with a cup of coffee." I let that sit for a second. On that Saturday, I said I showed up to the park with my nephew, like I do every week. I had a park permit. I'm on file as his guardian with the team. I sat in the same spot I always sit. The only thing that changed that day was that someone decided my presence, my blackness, my leather bag, my differentness, felt like a threat. I looked over at Sarah. "You said you were afraid of predators," I told her. "But you weren't afraid of an action. You were afraid of an image. You saw me sitting alone, and you called 911 to make that discomfort my problem." Then I turned back to the council. When Officer Riley approached me, I said I didn't yell. I didn't get up in his face. I asked him what law I was suspected of breaking. I pointed out that the loitering sign he was referencing only applied to 10 p.m. through 6 a.m. It was 10:10 a.m. I offered to show him my park permit, my status as Leo's guardian. For that, I was labeled uncooperative and obstructive. I looked straight into one of the cameras at the back, because I knew this would outlive that room. "I could have ended it right there," I said. "I could have taken out my marshal credentials on those bleachers, flipped that case open, watched his whole attitude change. And I know it would have. Because suddenly, I wouldn't be just a black woman at the park. I'd be one of the good ones. One of the people the system respects. But that's exactly why I didn't flash it. Because this isn't about me being special. It's about the fact that no black aunt, no black grandma, no black dad should need a badge in their bag to be allowed to watch their kid play sports in peace." I took a breath. "This system doesn't just punish people who break the rules," I said. "It punishes people like me for daring to question how those rules are applied. It gives people like Ms. Holloway here a direct line to power so they can turn their discomfort into a police report. And then it lets people like Councilman Price go home with a check when those calls roll in." I pointed to the screen showing the graph. "He built a business on this," I said. "On you calling 911 every time you see someone who doesn't look like you. On officers like Riley and Hutchins showing up ready to escalate. On kids like Leo learning way too early that following the rules doesn't protect them from being treated like criminals." I leaned forward. Just slightly. "I'm not leaving that park," I said. "I'm not leaving this city. I'm not leaving this fight just because someone in a visor decided my presence ruined their Saturday vibe." The room erupted. Some folks stood and clapped. Others just stared. Stunned. A few council members looked like they wanted to slide right under the table. Monroe from Internal Affairs stood up near the wall. "Based on what we've seen so far," he said. Voice carrying. "I'm recommending that Officer Riley and Sergeant Hutchins be suspended without pay, pending full disciplinary hearings. Captain Marsh's handling of the situation is under review. And I am recommending that the city suspend all payments to Safe Neighbor Patrol, pending an independent audit of their contract and incident patterns." Price shot up from his seat, face tight. "I need to recuse myself from this discussion," he said. "Potential conflict of interest." And he walked out of the chamber, clutching his leather portfolio like a life raft. For a minute, it felt like justice, or something close to it. 2 weeks later, I was back at City Park. Same field, same chalk lines. Same kids, though they ran a little closer to their parents now when they saw patrol cars roll past. Trauma does that. I parked in my usual spot. Leo and I walked in together. "You okay going back?" I asked him quietly. He nodded, but his hand squeezed mine a little tighter. "What if people are mean again?" he said. "Then we deal with it." I told him. Together. This is your team. This is your field. A few parents smiled and waved in that hesitant, awkward way people do when they're trying to show support, but also don't want to get dragged into anything messy. Others deliberately didn't look at me. Sarah's usual seat sat empty. Word was she'd pulled her kid from the team and told people the environment had become hostile. The irony of that. I don't even have a word for it. Coach Williams came over, visor crooked clipboard in hand. "Jordan, good to see you back," he said. "Yo, you ready to play ball?" Leo grinned, nodded, and ran to his team. I climbed to my usual spot on the bleachers and sat down. The metal felt cold, solid grounding. A patrol car cruised by on the loop, and for a second my chest tightened out of habit. Then I saw the driver, Officer Tyler Ramos. He slowed slightly, nodded toward me. "Marshall," he said through the open window, then kept going. Small thing. But it mattered. That evening, I turned on the local news. Because if you're the headline, you might as well see which version of your story they're going with. Officer Mark Riley has been suspended without pay, pending a disciplinary hearing. The anchor said. Sergeant Dale Hutchins is under internal review. Captain Ellen Marsh announced an early retirement effective immediately with full pension. Suspended. Under review. Early retirement with 70% of her salary. You hear those words enough times, and you start translating them in your head. Suspension often becomes quiet reassignment down the line. Review becomes, we found policy violations but no malicious intent. Early retirement becomes, we'll let you bow out gracefully if you don't make waves. My phone buzzed. Text from Ramos. Heard IA might close the bigger pattern case as insufficient evidence, it said. Off the record. Thought you should know. Insufficient evidence. After audio faux IA records, graphs federal interest. That phrase does a number on you. Later that night, sometime after 10, there was a soft knock at my front door. Not a cop knock. Just a quick, polite tap-tap. I checked my camera. Nobody on the porch. I opened the door carefully and looked down. Plain white envelope on the mat. No name, no return address. I put on gloves before I picked it up. Occupational habit. And opened it at the kitchen table. Inside was a printed page mostly covered in thick black redaction bars. I could see pieces of sentences here and there. Safe Neighbor Patrol. Monthly quota. Price confirms. Expand to Southside Parks. And one line at the bottom totally unredacted. They know you have the audit. Watch your back. I looked out the window and saw a dark sedan idling across the street for a second, headlights off. Tinted windows. No plate I could read at that angle. After maybe 20 seconds, it rolled away. Coincidence? Maybe. Maybe not. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number this time. The audit names 6 more parks, the text said. How far are you willing to go? That's the question I wrestle with, because here's where things stand. The contract with Safe Neighbor Patrol got suspended, at least on paper. Riley's fate is in limbo. Hutchins is under review. Marsh gets to retire comfortable. DOJ is digging, but the department lost 10 minutes of body cam footage from my arrest. The 10 minutes where Riley realized who I was and talked to Hutchins about what to do next. They say it's a technical glitch. I've seen enough technical glitches to know how convenient they can be. Meanwhile, life goes on. Leo still needs breakfast and rides and help with his math homework. I still need to pay the mortgage and show up to my own review hearings and decide which battles to fight and which to strategically postpone. The audit, whoever sent that envelope, says there are 6 more parks where the same pattern is happening. Same type of calls, same description of suspicious people, same company sniffing around for contracts. If I push, I put myself and Leo in more crosshairs. Political, legal, maybe even physical. If I stay quiet, I'm leaving those families to fend for themselves, knowing exactly what the playbook looks like. So here's what I've done so far. I filed a formal request with DOJ for a full pattern and practice investigation into our city's use of 911 police response to suspicious person calls and these cozy little security contracts. I've backed up every audio file, every email, every anonymous threat. And I keep going to that field, sitting in my usual spot, waving when Leo looks up at me. I refuse to vanish. Now I want to turn it over to you. Do you think any of this would have gone the way it did if I wasn't a federal officer with a badge in my bag and a recording device pinned to my shirt? If I'd been just Leo's aunt office worker, no connections, do you honestly believe internal affairs? The council DOJ, the news, any of them would have cared. Do you think that's fair? If it were you on that bleacher, coffee in hand, kid on the field, someone calling 911 because you made them uncomfortable, what would you have done? Handed over your ID and prayed. Got angry and yelled. Tried to walk away. Would you have fought it as hard as I did? Or would you have said, "This is just how things are," and tried to forget? I don't have all the answers. I know I'm tired. I know I'm not done. I know there are a lot of people in a lot of parks who don't have the badge or the training or the backup that I do, and they're the ones I'm really thinking about when I sit with all of this. So if you're still here listening to me spill my whole mess of a Saturday and everything that came after, thank you. Now I want to hear from you, Shamdinayo. Drop a comment and tell me what you think. Is the system fixable from the inside, or does it only move when people drag it into the spotlight like this? Have you ever been treated like a suspect in a place you had every right to be? A store? A park? Your own neighborhood? Just because of how you look, or what you were wearing, or who you were with? Tell me that story. Push back if you disagree with how I handled things. Share this with somebody who still says, if you just follow the rules, nothing bad will happen, and ask them if they're sure. And if you want more real stories like this, messy, uncomfortable, honest, hit subscribe, and stick around, because this isn't the last time I'm going to talk about what happens when people call the cops on the wrong woman at the wrong park. I promise you that.